So you're building for the South African market? Awesome. But let's talk about payments for a second. It's so much more than just ticking a few boxes on a feature list, right? It's all about strategy. In this explainer, we're going to map out the whole landscape for you. Think of this less like a boring list and more like a builder's guide to making those smart decisions that really impact your user's experience and, of course, your bottom line. All right, let's jump in. Yeah, this quote right here, it absolutely hits the nail on the head. So many of us fall into this trap, thinking, hey, let's just support all the payments. Just slap every logo on the checkout page and call it a day. But it's just not that simple. As we're about to see, every single payment method is like its own little product, with its own vibe, its own costs, and its own headaches for your business.
Okay, so this is the mental model I want us to use for this whole explainer. Let's totally ditch that checklist idea. Instead, I want you to think of every single payment method as its own product. And we're going to judge each one on three key things. First, what's the user experience, the UX, actually like for your customer? Second, what's it going to cost you? And third, what's the operational load? The behind-the-scenes stuff like refunds and trying to figure out where all the money went. So here's our route. First, we'll hit cards, the global standard. Then we'll dive into instant EFT, a huge local player with some really interesting trade-offs. After that, we'll look at the awesome user experience boost you get from QR and mobile. And finally, we'll pull it all together so you can start building your perfect payment stack. All right, first stop on our map, cards. This is the bedrock, the foundation of pretty much any payment stack you're going to build. They're the global standard, and honestly, they're the absolute baseline of what South African consumers expect online. For any e-commerce or SaaS business, this is your non-negotiable starting point. The basics here are pretty straightforward. Visa and Mastercard, every single payment provider is going to support them. That's a given. Now, American Express or Amex, that's a slightly different story. It's not as common, and support for it can be a bit hit or miss. You'll find that places like Paystack and Payfast do support it, but you really got to check first, especially if you know your customers are big Amex users. Okay, now we get to a really critical local detail. You have to know this. In South Africa, 3D Secure is mandatory. It's not optional. And while it's great for security, for your user, well, it adds friction. It means that first payment is never going to be totally seamless. They get bounced over to their bank's website or app to punch in a PIN or tap approve. It's this extra kind of clunky step that you absolutely have to account for in your user flow.
But, and this is a big but, there is a brilliant solution. It's called tokenization. So after that one slightly painful 3D secure payment, the payment provider works some magic. They create this secure token. Think of it like a secret code that stands in for the real card details. And with that token, you can charge the card again and again for things like subscriptions or one-click checkouts, and the user doesn't have to go through 3D secure every time. This is the secret sauce that makes modern e-commerce and SaaS feel so smooth.
Okay, let's move to a completely different region on our map, one that's very specific to South Africa, instant EFT. Now, this is a massively popular local payment method, but it's not like cards. It comes with this really, really clear trade-off. For you, the business, it's cheaper, but for your user, it's a whole lot more complicated. And yep, this lays it out perfectly. The big win for you is pretty simple: lower transaction fees. You save money. But the downside for your customer is a much higher friction experience. And what does more friction mean? It means more chances for them to just give up and leave before they actually pay you. That's the risk. So let's actually walk through that friction. Imagine you're the customer. First, you have to pick your bank from a list. Then you get redirected to a new page. You have to log into your internet banking. Then you probably have to authenticate that login on your phone. Then you have to find and approve the payment. And finally, you just cross your fingers and hope the website redirects you back correctly. That's 5, maybe 6 steps where a user can get confused or just bail. It's a world away from just typing in a credit card number.
But hey, the reason people offer this is because the savings can be pretty compelling. Just look at the numbers from the big guys. You're seeing fees around 1.5% to 2%. Now, compared to card fees, especially on bigger purchases, that can add up to some serious savings. So that's the real strategic question you have to ask yourself. Is that cost saving worth the risk of a lower conversion rate? It's a classic trade-off. All right, let's cruise over to a much cooler, much slicker part of our map: QR and mobile payments. This section is all about one thing: making life easier for the user. It's about killing friction and meeting people where they live, which is on their phones, right?
When we talk about Cure payments in South Africa, you're really dealing with three big players. You've got the standalone apps that everyone knows, SnapScan and Zapper. And then you have the scan-to-pay option that's actually built right into most of the banking apps themselves. That's usually powered by Masterpass. Now, here's the key strategic insight. And please listen to this. Your goal is not to integrate with every single one of these wallets individually. Don't go sign up with Zapper and then SnapScan and then someone else. That would be an absolute nightmare to manage. The smart move is to find a payment gateway, like a Paystack or a Payfast, that bundles them all together for you in one simple integration. Let them do the heavy lifting. Okay, let's talk about the big one, Apple Pay. It feels like this totally new thing, right? Like a whole new payment network that's competing with Visa or Mastercard. But that's actually not what's going on.
Here's the secret. Apple Pay isn't a new payment rail. It's a new and way better user experience for cards. It sits right on top of the existing card networks. So when your customer uses Apple Pay, they're still using their Visa or Mastercard behind the scenes. The difference is, instead of fumbling with card numbers and waiting for a 3D secure pop-up, they just look at their phone or touch a button. It's beautiful.
But you knew there was a but, right? That amazing UX can come with a premium price tag. Just look at this example from Flutterwave. Their rate for Apple Pay and Google Pay is noticeably higher than their standard card rate. So once again, we're back to a strategic trade-off. Are you willing to pay a little more per transaction for what is very likely a higher conversion rate on mobile? It's something you've got to weigh up. Okay, so we've traveled across the map. We've explored the lands of cards, instant EFT, and mobile payments. Now it's time for the most important part. Let's pull everything we've learned together and actually chart a course for your business. Let's do a quick recap to lock this all in. Think of this as your cheat sheet. Cards, universal, but remember that 3D secure friction up front. Instant EFT, cheaper for you, but more steps for your user, which can hurt conversion. QR codes, the key is bundling, not individual integrations. Apple Pay, it's just a slicker UX for your existing cards. Oh, and a quick note, we didn't dive deep into debit orders, but just know that's a whole other world that usually needs a specialized provider. So we've figured out all the ways to get money in. And I think the biggest takeaway is that there's no single best answer. The right payment stack for a huge online store is going to be totally different from a simple subscription service. Your job as the builder is to use this map to weigh those trade-offs, UX, cost, and complexity, and chart the right course for your product. But once you've mastered getting money in, a whole new challenge pops up. How do you manage payouts, splits, and refunds, especially if you're building a marketplace? Well, that's a whole other map we'll have to explore another time.